Vice Chair and board members, I believe everybody's here and we're ready.
Vice Chair Hedgepeth, this is Bill Rose. It looks like we've got everyone on the board. We have a quorum, so we can get started at any time. I think your microphone may have been muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
Prior to starting, if all board members can turn their cameras back on. Thank you.
Yeah, Vice Chair Hedgepeth, this is Bill Rose again. I think you're muted.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bill Rose. So everyone can hear me? We'll go ahead and start the meeting and call to order the 4:30 regular session. It's teleconference. We just wanted everyone to know we're continuing here due to the provisions of the governor's executive order, N2520 and N2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act, and in order for the health officer of the County of Sonoma to shelter in place to minimize the spread of the COVID-19, the board members will participate by teleconference in the Desire View meeting today. The live stream of the meeting will be uploaded to the city website as soon as possible after this meeting. If you emailed or called in your public comment prior to the meeting, these comments will be summarized for comments into the record, but full emails will be archived as part of the record. So we'll now have a call to order. We'll be using Zoom for that. Board members and staff are participating from remote locations, practicing appropriate social distancing. And the members of the public may view and listen to the meeting as noted on the city's website and as noted on the agenda. Recording Secretary, can you please give us a roll call?
Okay. Let the record reflect that Vice Chair Hedgepeth and board members Cordenbrock, Sharon, Wicks, and Weigel are present, and Chair Kincaid and board member Goldschlag are absent.
Thank you. Thank you. So with that, our next step is the approval of the minutes. So any comments or thoughts about the vets clinic that we reviewed 2 weeks ago?
This is board member Cordenbrock. The only thing that I see is just under the roll call, item 1, it just has Henry Wicks as being absent. So just a minor modification to that.
All right. Thank you for that. That's very helpful.
Otherwise, no comments.
Excellent. Yes, we all corrected that. Thank you, Henry, for all your comments as well. So with that,
just Vice Chair, this is Bill again. Just a quick clarification, and maybe board member Wicks can clarify. Do you recall, board member Wicks, if you were present for the roll call? I think you might have come in a little late, so that may be an accurate reflection. I can't recall.
That is correct. I was having trouble getting video connected, so I was about 5 minutes behind the clock.
Okay, so I think we can leave the minutes as is, and then the vote actually captures your attendance. So
Gotcha. Sorry about that.
Yes, this is the recording secretary. I did do a new roll call a little bit below the original roll call in the minutes. So it reflects board member Wicks being at the meeting.
yes. So with that, the minutes can stand, and Henry Wicks's vote was counted. We can move on now to board business. So the design review statement of purpose is zoning code chapter 20-52-030F project review. The review authority shall consider the location, design, site plan configuration, and the overall effect of the proposed project upon surrounding properties and the city in general. Review shall be conducted by comparing the proposed project to the general plan, any applicable specific plan, applicable zoning code standards and requirements, consistency of the project with the city's design guidelines, architectural criteria for special areas, and other applicable city requirements, city policy statements and development plans. So with that, we're going to move on to public comments, not on the agenda. At this time, any person who is logged in, who's listening in, who has matters needing to be addressed that aren't listed on the agenda today, but are within the subject matter or jurisdiction, the public may comment on the agenda items when the item is called. So you'll be given 3 minutes after staff cues you in. That's the 3-minute clock. So planning staff, do we have any public comments other than for the specific concept review today?
Yes, we have one recorded voicemail, which is for item number 4, items not on the agenda.
Okay, so you have one that's for item number 4, you're saying?
Correct. And we're about to play the recording.
Okay. So do you wish to play that now? Or at the item that we're speaking of?
I believe my understanding is that it is a recording. It is under item number 4. It's not on
Okay.
this agenda, so I think we'll play that right now.
Thank you.
My apologies.
Since it's not on the agenda, that's fine, everyone. That's great. Since it's not on the concept review, let's hear it now.
And my apologies. There was somebody raising their hand, so I'm going to let her speak.
Excellent.
Okay, she's already unmuted. Mary, if you can hear us, you're ready to speak.
This is one of the hosts. I just noticed we tried to promote Mary to be able to speak, and we're getting an error message saying allowing to talk is not available because Mary's using an older version of Zoom. So she's unable to speak in this manner. You're welcome to give the phone call or the phone number, I guess, if they want to call in and have public comment, but we cannot have them speak without a newer version of Zoom.
But we can hear just auditorily through the phone if we can get that.
They would have to call back in via the phone and raise their hand pressing *9, and then we would be able to accommodate their public.
Okay.
But at this time, it's on the way they logged into Zoom. We cannot.
Okay. So they're aware there's an option, and perhaps in the future proceedings of today's meeting, we might hear them.
But this is the first time that I'm letting them know. So Mary, so whoever's logged in under the name Mary with their hand raised, we are unable to listen to you at this time. You would have to call back, and we can listen to you you can call the number, press *9. It's on the agenda. But at this time, we could not promote you to be able to hear your audio due to the Zoom that you logged in on.
Mike,
Okay.
could we announce that phone number? Would you be able to do that?
Yes, I have to find it. 1 second.
I actually have it up right here to make life easier.
That would be great.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the agenda. It says it's 1-888-475-4499, and the instructions are that you enter the webinar ID, which is 95509724837, and then that, I believe, gets you in. And then what Mike was saying, you press *9 to raise your hand or whatever to be able to talk.
Thank you, Board Member Wiggle. Perhaps we can wait a few more moments here to see if they'll go ahead and go for that dial-in.
If we could play the voicemail in the meantime, it's not very long.
Yeah, I'd recommend we go ahead and play that now.
Yeah, I want to comment on item number 4. My name is Jeff Saudi, Santa Rosa. I want to speak about the One Santa Rosa project. The one that's adjacent to the Roxy Theater. It's a shovel-ready project. I want to get it up and going and accelerate the process. That property's been dormant for 10 years, and it's time to get moving on it. So I want to encourage you to accelerate the process where they can get it going, get it done, and you'll be glad you did once the project's done. I promise you that. It'll look wonderful. And so I want to encourage you to accelerate the process and get it up and going, and let's get...
Got cut off.
Right.
Ripping and rolling on that project and get it up and done. Thanks.
Thank you for that comment. I will note, I don't know, Patty, if you can hear me. Are we off mute now? No?
We can hear you, Vice Chair.
Sure. I just wanted to, I think his name is Jeff. My understanding is that the board did have that before us, One Santa Rosa Avenue, and it was transferred into the worthy hands of staff. And staff is through the zoning administration, is the further step of it seeing its way through the process. And that's our comment as a board regarding One Santa Rosa Avenue as a living, breathing project for the future.
Yep, that's correct. And since it's not on the agenda tonight, we shouldn't discuss it in any more detail. But yes, it's moving through the process. Correct.
That's fine. Just stating the facts is all. Is that our only public speaker that we have foreknowledge of that's speaking on something besides the project here on Coburn?
I believe we have a caller that has called in and is ready to speak.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Barry, and I'm calling regarding the virtual public meeting format for Petaluma Hill Road Apartments. I'm really concerned about the traffic situation if this goes into place. I mean, Lola's Market has 3 driveways where people go in and out of all the time.
Mary, can I, with Vice Chair Hedgepeth kind of not there, it sounds like you're wanting to comment on the project that we're discussing today, and this time is for items not on our agenda, and that sounds like that's an item on the agenda that you would like to comment on. So so you'll have to wait till the public comment period for that item, which will come up later.
Okay.
Thank you, Board Member Weigel. This is Bill Rose. I couldn't unmute fast enough, but you're correct. Yeah. So, Mary, we'll have this item up as an agenda item here in just a few minutes. If you can stay on and watch, there will be an opportunity for you to speak directly to this item. So, if you can just hang out a little bit, we'll get you in.
All right, thank you. Yes, it was a little hard to hear which project there, but we'll move on then. If that's all the public comment not addressing this particular item, we can move on to statements of abstention. Is that true? So Do we have any board members that need to abstain from the proceedings for this item?
Yes, this is Board Member Cordenbrock. I will have to abstain from this item.
Thank you. And it's not an abstention, I believe, but because Chair Kincaid is out, he will be also not in the proceedings. So that should summarize the abstentions. Okay. So moving on then to the scheduled items. Did you have a question? No. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So just remember, for those items requiring recusal, staff will mute the audio and video for recused members during the item to bring the member back after the item is completed. So we have, we'll see board member later at this time from Brock. Okay. So at this point, then, we would like to turn to the Petaluma Hill Road Apartments Design Review Concept 587 Colgan Avenue, file number DR20-032. And the background of that, a proposed future development for 7-building, 147-unit, 3-story, multifamily rental housing project consisting of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom units located at the southwest corner of Petaluma Hill Road and Colgan Avenue, APNs 144-021, 019, 022, 035, 071, 072. And our senior planner is Kristen A. Tumians. And at this point, we'd like to turn it to a report from, is it from staff that we're looking at next with this item? Would it be staff answering questions to board members in a concept, or any brief that staff may want to share before questions from board members?
Yeah, Vice Chair, this is Bill again. It'll be a very brief presentation by Kristen A. And then she'll be able to respond to any questions that the board may have. It's also at the board's pleasure if you'd like to hear from the applicants before we get into questions, and you can present all of your questions together and we can answer accordingly, whether it's staff or the applicant. So, but yeah, Kristen A. will do a brief presentation at this time.
Yeah. Yeah, so the question, I remember in previous concept, we've had questions from board members to staff direct, and then we jump over to after the proponent. We could go that way, or we could couplet it all together. I believe in the past we've tried to clarify by simply partitioning those two.
It's either way you'd like. As I mentioned, it's a fairly brief presentation for concept review items. Staff really does very minimal review, project review. So we will be able to answer some questions, general in nature. And then also applicant is prepared to present the item as well.
That's fine. I'd like to go that way so that we can perhaps circle back to you. So Kristen A., why don't you share?
Thank you, Vice Chair Hedgepeth and members of the Design Review Board. This is, as you mentioned, a concept design review for Petaluma Hill Road Apartments. It's composed of several parcels along Petaluma Hill Road and Colgan Avenue. If we could go to the next slide, please. Here's the location of the project site. The project site is just under 5 acres, the southwest corner of Petaluma Hill Road and Colgan Avenue. And the addresses range, there's several addresses, but they range from 1683 to 1775 Petaluma Hill Road. And as you can see, the area is mostly developed, is a mostly developed urban area. And nearby land uses include residential and commercial type uses. Next slide, please. And as you mentioned, Vice Chair Hedgepeth, this is a proposed 147-unit, 3-story walk-up apartment project. And next slide, please. And here is a overview of the site plan. As you can see, it encompasses several parcels The project will have 7 buildings, 5 buildings with 20 units, 1 building with 17 units with some common amenities on the ground floor, and 1 building with 10 units. All the buildings are proposed as a 3-story stacked flat configuration with some units enjoying direct garage access. Overall, there are 84 tuck under parking spaces and 154 surface parking spaces for a total of 238 parking spaces. And the applicant is proposing a parking ratio of 1.62 spaces per unit. That amounts to a 12.2% parking reduction. Next slide, please. And that concludes my very brief presentation, a very brief overview of what the applicant's proposing as a concept. And they have a longer presentation to go through their design materials. And staff is here for any questions you might have.
Well, why don't we go through and perhaps I'll just stay alphabetical here. We have Board Member Cordenbrock, Sharon, Weigel, and Wicks in our presence. Is that true?
Not Cordenbrook.
Okay. All right. So it's just, that's right. So Adam, why don't you, if you have questions, do you want to forward a question?
Sure. I don't have any questions at this time. That was a very succinct presentation. I may have questions after the applicant's presentation, so I wonder if we might want to save our questions until then.
Thank you, Adam. Board Member Weigel, do you have any questions of staff?
Yeah, I actually do. So Kristen, I emailed you, but I think it was probably a little too late. I feel like we've seen this project before. Would I be mistaken in that?
Yeah, I looked into, I did get your email, but it was
yeah, it was like 4 o'clock, so I'm sorry.
I had a hard time responding, but I did some research at the last second before the meeting started, and it looks like there was a similar project at 2660 Petaluma Hill Road for 38 degrees north, phase 2, and it had a similar parcel shape, and I don't recall how many stories that one is, but I think it looks very similar in style.
Yeah. Maybe the applicant can tell us too, and they can tell us later. But I feel like this design is extremely familiar to me. Like I've seen it before.
Would have been West
Henry,
College.
Do you remember?
Yeah, West College.
It's like, so it's the same design. Okay, cool. All right, that answers that. All right, thanks, Henry. And then, Kristen, my second question is about the parking reduction. There's parking reductions that are part of concessions related to affordable housing, but it does not appear that there's an affordable housing component right now. So basically, the parking reduction would be an action on the part of the board, correct? Which is allowable based on its location. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. If it's not part of a density bonus or some sort of concession for affordable housing, then it's the parking reduction is up to the discretion of the design review board.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then I guess this being a housing project, how does that work? Because it won't come to us; it'll go to the zoning administrator. You know what I mean? So I guess does the zoning administrator make that determination in that regard?
Yeah, I guess because if it's, I have to check if this is reduced review authority. If you would let me, if you'd come back to me in a minute, let me double check.
Yeah, that'd be fine. That's what I was thinking, that it's reduced review authority just because it's a housing project, but I could be wrong. So that'd be great. And I guess we can go to Henry. Those are my questions.
Yeah, that's my only question to staff is, are we going to see this again, or is this a project that would go to the zoning administrator for preliminary and final?
We will get that answer for you all here momentarily.
Hey, Vice Chair Hedgepath, do we want to go ahead and move to the applicant presentation while they look that up?
Yeah, we could do that. That's
I do have that information. I was able to pull up the GIS real quick, and it's not within the Santa Rosa Avenue corridor priority development area. So it would not benefit from reduced review authority. So it's just outside, it's just to the east of the Santa Rosa Avenue corridor.
Yeah, I had a feeling it was close, and I didn't have a chance to go look at the GIS either. So thank you.
So this would go to the design review board.
So yeah, it's going to have a preliminary level. There could be deferral to staff for final, but it will be seen preliminary because it's not in a priority area, in a corridor area. One question I had, I want to get Henry Wicks. Henry, do you have any questions for staff too?
No.
Okay. One of the questions I have back to Kristen and Bill is that with apartments, even if you're outside a priority area, just general higher density sites, you have an 8% of your units which typically fall into deed restriction, or is there an in lieu world where all can be market rate, no units are earmarked or ledgered for lesser expense per month? I'm just curious about whether that I thought there was like a 15% for sale tentative map projects and an 8% for multifamily, where the consideration of an applicant looking at deed restriction for at least 8% of the units was a policy.
Yeah, Vice Chair Hedgepeth, this is Bill Rose. It's not a requirement, so there's an option for the applicants. And so they can perhaps describe in their presentation what they intend to do relative to providing on-site versus paying the fee. I don't know what their plan is at this point. I mean, it appears it's to pay the fee because I don't believe they're providing on-site affordable, but they can respond to that more directly.
Yeah, I'm just saying that there's a choice and an option there that it's been on the books. So, okay, well, with that, it looks like we have all board members.
Vice Chair Hedgepeth?
Yes, go ahead.
One that I'll bring up now. Thank you. A question about process for planning staff. In terms, when exactly in the process does the traffic study come into play and DPW and roads weigh in on the proposed project?
So thank you, board member Sharon. This is Kristen Tumians in planning. Normally that's required in the initial review phase. Traffic usually requests either a traffic memo or a traffic study, depending on what sort of activity has occurred in the vicinity. And so that would likely be part of their application when they submit their formal planning entitlement.
So after this?
Yes. So yeah, we don't have a formal application yet for this development. So it would come once they submit for their formal application and traffic determines what type of memo or study they're looking for.
Okay. So in terms of us weighing in upon site plan and ingress, egress, and traffic impacts and impacts on roads necessarily, we should be looking pretty specifically at the design and the structures at this point?
Yes, and you can also look at site circulation and how well the site works in general.
Mm-hmm.
So that is also part of.
Okay, so on the headward, exterior to the site, how it impacts, the surrounding roads. So at this point, that's sort of out of the purview. I mean, normally it would defer to the traffic study and to DPW when they look at it. So.
Yes. So, for instance, they might require, just as an example, they might require a center median or, something that alters the access to the site. It's hard to know what traffic will require without having that study done.
Okay. All right. So preliminary at this point. Thank you.
Thank you too, Adam. Yeah, getting back to Kristen with just a follow up on that. With it's under 5 acres, as far as the conditional use permit, typically there's a pre-app meeting. It doesn't necessarily need a mitigated negative deck because it's under 5 acres and it complies with zoning. Is that the path so far that the project's taken? Has it had a weigh-in with fire department at all in any early look level?
Yes, I believe there was an internal meeting with fire and they looked at internal access. I don't recall their comments off the top of my head. And as far as CEQA is concerned, there are so many new exemptions that could apply to this project. Namely, if the proposal meets the general plan density that's allowed on the site, there's a variety of exemptions that could potentially accommodate this project.
Right. Typically, the path with all those exemptions is there's a tree study, there's a tree survey, there is noise and traffic that is bundled into the application.
Yeah, it's a more elaborate exemption with extra studies attached to it.
Right. And we'd be seeing those at the preliminary level to complement the. Okay. Thank you. Any further questions of staff before we go on to the presentation? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and hear from the representatives of the project, the proponents, and their plan.
Be 1 second, DRB. We're not working with a PowerPoint, so be a moment. This is the host. Just so you're aware, we have a few different presenters today from the applicant team. So if you guys can unmute and mute yourself at your discretion. Because this is a PDF, not a PowerPoint, all I can do is scroll up and down. So if you can just let me know if you want to scroll down or up at any given time, and I will follow your direction. Thank you.
I believe the applicant team can unmute themselves when they're ready to present.
Jeff and Tim, you are already unmuted. You do not need to raise your hand. You can just start speaking. Again, this is the host. If the applicant team can hear me, you have the ability to mute and unmute yourself at your discretion. So please go ahead and give your presentation when you're ready.
To the applicant team, this is Bill Rose. If you just hover your cursor over the screen, you should get a mute and unmute button down on the generally the lower left. You can unmute that at any time. Vice Chair Hedgepeth, this is Bill.
Yes.
Perhaps we can take a 3-minute break, 5-minute break, and see if we can get these get the applicants
right.
up and running. Yeah.
Happy to do that. We'll be in standby.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
And you
Tim.
can mute your computers. Thanks.
Adam? Can you hear me, Adam?
Kirk, we can all hear you. You are loud and clear.
Okay, we're waiting for Jeff
Okay.
and Tim
Jeff,
to be
Tim,
unmuted.
Christine, and
Right.
McGowan, who are on the same call, all have their microphones unmuted, but we have not heard anything from them yet.
Okay.
It's Christine. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
And James Jensen is also on the call. He is still muted at this time.
Yeah, this is James. I'll remain unmuted until asked to speak. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. We can hear you loud and clear.
Is there anyone else from the applicant team that will be speaking tonight, or did we get a sound check on everyone that will be speaking?
And now we're still waiting on Jeff Johnson and Tim McGowan. They raised their hand. Their microphone is appearing unmuted, but we have not heard anything from them yet. So Jeff and Tim, we've done everything on our side. We just need you to unmute yourselves, which it appears you just did. And you should be able to just speak into the microphone. If not, you may have to log out of the Zoom call and log back in and connect audio to your device. But if you are talking right now, we cannot hear you, but it does appear that you are unmuted, so we should be able to.
Okay, this is Christine. So Jeff and Tim are having trouble with their mic, so they've asked that Kirk go ahead and start the presentation, and they will try to log back in.
It'll be a few minutes for the board members to return, and then we will start the meeting, and they can go ahead and present when ready.
Okay. You okay with that, Kirk?
Guess I'm gonna have to be.
I guess maybe it's James could start with the map.
And if all the board members could turn the cameras on, I think we're ready to go.
And this is the host to the applicant team. Because this is a PDF, if you can just tell me when to scroll, since there's no slides to click next on, just
Sure.
know where you want me to stop.
Understood. So I've got the image of, oh, there we go. Okay, if we could scroll up to the overall site plan, which is to move the large sheet up.
I'm at the top of the document right now.
Oh, you can't move it so we can see the full site plan, the engineering site plan.
You want that one?
There you go.
Oh, sorry. I understand.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Kirk McKinley. I'm the architect on the project, and we actually have the same development team on this project as we had on West College. And so Tim McGowan was going to introduce the group, but it includes Tim McGowan and Chris McKellar, and as McKellar McGowan being the principal individuals developing the project, along with Jeff Johnson and Scott Myers, who played their significant roles as well. What's interesting about this site is that I'll go around and give you the context, which I'm sure you're aware of what the context is, but it's kind of interesting. On the north side of the site, across of Colligan Street, there's a bunch of single-family houses with a two-story house on the corner. And then along Petaluma, starting from the north, there's a bunch of automotive shops. Right across this at the corner of Colligan and Petaluma Hill is Lola's, the Mexican grocery store. And then as you proceed south, there's two-story residential on the opposite side of the street. It's actually the backyards of the residential, and there's a fence there. To the south, we have a bunch of small bungalows on the property line, and almost the size of a little trailer as you get on the western portion of that property line. And then moving over to the west, the western property line is a mixture of kind of mixed industrial uses and storage yards as you go north on that property line. It's really kind of a hard edge to put a residential against, but there's this real mix of uses all around the site that makes it's very interesting as to what you front on things. So what we've actually done with the project from a site standpoint is to push the buildings towards Petaluma and use some of the same concepts we used over on West College, where we've got front doors opening out to the street, opening out to Colligan to the north, and Petaluma Hill to the west or to the east. And along the eastern frontage, there's kind of a break between the buildings where we have the rec building, which is, excuse me, centrally located in the whole project site. And then along the southern boundary, we've actually turned the buildings to see to give a little bit more room on that edge of the site because of the lower scale residential. And then excuse me again, I'm gonna drink of water. And then along the western boundary, we've tried to stay away from that boundary because of it's kind of a harsh edge. We're looking at the back of the industrial building and a lot of storage yards, so we tried to push the buildings off that edge of the site. And actually, that's where most of the drainage of the site goes. The drainage goes from the east to the west, and that's where we have our biofiltration basin is along that particular border. The other feature of this site that always is a challenge is that we're over 30 feet in height on the buildings, and thus we have to have aerial access by the fire truck, which requires a fire truck to be on a long side of a building, at least 15 to 30 feet away from the building. So what it does is it has a tendency to make you spread the buildings out in order to get fire protection. So that's part of the reason that you don't see the buildings bundled around a central rec area or a central courtyard kind of approach, although we have done that by actually grouping buildings around the rec area. And so we've got a lot of that feel in the layout of the project. Could we move to the next slide? The building is a three-story walk-up flats, and it's got some of the same feel that the West College building had before we actually started putting some changes on the architecture for West College based on input from the community and input from the design board. Because this project area has this kind of blend of all these different kinds of urban uses, like single family, we've got attached multifamily, we've got a grocery store, we've got industrial. It's kind of got this urban blend of uses. And so we decided that we should do more of a contemporary building, more of an urban blend of a building, and that's what you see before you. And we've selected materials that have that more urban character as well. For instance, rather than using wood on this building, we've created a stone base on the building that articulates itself up through the building and around side elevations and on the rear of the building. And then to add some excitement and a little bit of pizzazz to the building, we've taken a lot of the shadow boxes that we've created on the building. We've painted the inside edge of it striking colors. In this particular application, it's kind of like a tangerine orange. And you can see it in that front horizontal element, that front vertical element on the elevation, and you can see a little bit of it on the side elevation as you go around the building. But we've actually painted the inside edges of a lot of those shadow boxes to create this kind of spark of color, and not being real bold about it, but try to be really kind of subtle and soft about it. But the building has a really timeless character to it. It has a very elegant character to it. It certainly has a different feel than the rest of the architecture in the community, but I think it blends a lot of the uses together, and it's a very stately looking building, and I really think it'll stand the test of time. Can we go up in the plans? No, roll the other direction. I think you understand. I think everybody pretty much understands the use of the building and the way it functions. It's a 3-story building. It's got residential on the ground floor with parking behind it that feeds all those ground floor units. And then the other parking supplies some of the parking for the upstairs units. And the second and third floors stack on top of this. The ground floor units have patios that are going to front on the street. So we're going to get this nice feel of a connection, a pedestrian connection between the buildings and the front entries of the building, which I think is an important flair to have to connect the buildings and the site to the outstanding neighborhood. Do we roll through the next, go to sheet A2? Next sheet. This is just the 3rd floor and the roof plan. We're putting all the HVAC equipment on the roof so that we won't have problems with, minimizing landscaping, and we won't have we'll be able to shield all of the mechanical up on the roof more effectively than having it down on the ground. Next sheet. These are the side and rear elevations, and I believe the next sheet, A4, has these colored up. Next sheet. Keep going. I want to get to the colored sheets that show these elevations colored. Keep going. Okay, these are the walk-around elevations of the building. So we've got a left side and a right side of the elevation, as you can see. But we've carried that stone base around the building, so it's kind of we've got that continuity. And then on the back elevation where we've got the parking area, we've actually taken that same accent color and created entry highlights so that we have an impact element of the same color on the back elevations. Now, the one thing you can't see on these elevations that you will see obtusely when you look at the buildings is all this color on the inside of the shadow boxes. And you're not seeing it on straight on elevation. You're seeing it more in perspective when you look at the building in perspective. But all the materials are carried consistently around the building. The architecture is carried consistently around the building. The same kind of detailing that we have on the front elevations on the back elevation. And we actually, in this particular project, we actually have three different building styles, because in order to get the mix correct on the site, in order to get the density on the site, we've got a sample of 3 different buildings to achieve that goal. Christine, you want to talk about the landscape?
Hi, this is Christine Talbot from Quadriga Landscape Architecture. If you could just please scroll down to the next sheet. I think Kirk talked about some of the challenges of the site and screening some of the existing uses to the west specifically, and providing a more pedestrian-friendly area. So this project will be providing, a much improved sidewalk and streetscape experience with street trees and a sidewalk and so forth. And we really worked hard to try and provide as many trees as we possibly could to screen and provide shading. We're looking specifically to screen the edge properties with fencing and also plantings. We provided the orchard style parking as well as we could. I think, based on initial discussions with fire, it is a challenge to get a complete coverage because of the aerial access, but we have been working back and forth to provide as much shade as possible. The outdoor common space is really important to the owners, and so we've incorporated similar recreation elements with the pool area, and we've included a play area and also some small seating areas and pet relief areas. Over to the next sheet. Please scroll to the next sheet. Thank you. This is an enlargement showing the pool deck area with the spa and outdoor dining that connects to the recreation building to provide kind of a year-round outdoor space for families and residents. And then to the sheet west, where the number 4 or 5, that's an area that's reserved for a teen age group. So there's kind of a little, I guess you'd call it a nook, where we've included some game tables and areas for them to gather where it's still visible, but a little bit out of sight, so they might use that space. And then to the right, we have a little enlargement of the play. We're looking at a more natural play area that's protected from traffic with plantings and a little bit of we also have a couple pet relief and sitting areas dotted throughout to provide.
Christine, this is Bill Rowe. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to remind for those people not speaking, if you could kindly mute your computer, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, I think, one of the patterns that we're going to be creating with this project is really a street tree presence. So we're looking very closely at what that might be, because I think, as Kirk was explaining, there's a lot of holes along this Petaluma Hill Road. There's industrial, there's commercial, there's retail, and then there's a smattering of single-family homes and mixed multifamily. So I think we're really looking to create a very lush environment on the site for the residents and also for people walking by and making that corner connection, because it is pretty critical with the market to provide that pedestrian access. So I think in that regard, we think this is a very important project. I believe that's the end of my slides. Can you scroll down a little bit? One more. I think that's it.
Yeah, we've reached the end of this slide.
And just, I know that the owners, they've been trying to get their sound to work, and they apologize. Jeff is on the phone, so if does he need to raise his hand to provide any?
Yeah, if you can press *9, it'll when it raises his hand, it brings him to the top of the list. We can
I
find
think
him.
he'd like to say something about the project.
So at this time, it doesn't appear that anybody else is on the call.
Okay.
I've given them permission to speak again, though, under their names. This is Jeff and Tim, or no?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Can you hear us?
Ah.
Yes, we can.
Oh, you can
You can hear us now?
We can hear you now.
What the heck? Oh, this has been a bit of a stressful 20 minutes or so.
Oh.
Well, I don't know what we have to add at this point, Tim. Do you want to say anything?
No, I'm just like, I'm Tim.
Say your name.
I'm Tim McGowan. I'm president of McKellar McGowan, and I just wanted to introduce everybody, but that's already been done. Just want to let you know that we are very happy to be in Santa Rosa to help with the housing needs, and particularly in aftermath of the Tubbs fire and its effect. We're excited about the Petaluma Hill project. We intend to bring a high quality, high amenitized development to the community. As you know, we're also building the 117 unit apartment complex on College in Santa Rosa. So we are, as a company, very much committed to be part of the housing landscape in Santa Rosa for years to come. We love the community. We love the local pride and the residents who cherish the lifestyles that Santa Rosa has to offer. So we're excited about being part of the community and look forward to working with you. We've enjoyed working with staff, and they've been very helpful. So, and then I was going to introduce everybody. So that's already been done. But sorry for the delays in our response. It's not like we haven't been trying. We've been pulling our hair out trying to get online. So thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate it.
Yeah, ditto. And I just wanted to say that we appreciate this process of getting in front of you and getting our ideas and our plans in front of you early. It's very, very helpful. It was very helpful on our West College project, and it did result in some beneficial changes. And frankly, I don't know of another jurisdiction that does it. So I'm appreciative of this concept design review process. We all are. I was going to say a lot of stuff that's already gotten said as well. I don't know, Christine, if you touched on all of the common area amenities, but we also plan to implement and incorporate a very robust gym and workout area on the bottom floor of the building that is adjacent to the pool. So there, in that area, there will be a significant gym set up. There will also be a conference room or rooms and work areas for the residents. In addition, we plan to incorporate in separate rooms, a dog washing station, so that people don't have to, wash their pets in the bathtub, but they'll have a professional style dog washing area, and we'll also have a room dedicated to bicycle repair and working on bicycles. Circulation, I don't know if that was touched on, but the circulation will be entrance and exit on Petaluma Road and on Colgan Avenue. There will also be a emergency only access off of Petaluma Hill Road, and all of that was with after some significant interchange and a lot of input with fire. So we've engaged staff quite a bit on this design, and fire has weighed in on the preliminary design. So we feel very comfortable about that. We do expect that our rec center and our gym and everything will be kind of a wow factor for us. We really mean it to be, and we intend it to be a very state of the art and sort of top of the heap. We can also address any other questions you have or any other points that were raised. We do know we have to go through a more robust CEQA process and have engaged all the necessary consultants, traffic, noise, bio, all those things that will be, all those reports and everything will be incorporated in our formal submittal. I think that's it for me for the moment.
Well, thank you, Jeff and Tim. That was excellent. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank
We
you.
can hear you now.
We
We can always hear you.
Vice Chair, we can always hear you, but we couldn't be heard. That's most frustrating.
Well, I'm sorry for your toyment and anxiety. It's rewarded with the pleasure of hearing you and
thank you.
Your exuberance from West College telescopes to this project. We appreciate coming to the post-tub fire issue, and it's at this time there's just 4 of us. It's not 7 with some abstentions and some vacations. So we've been able to question to staff various questions. I think you probably heard those. What I'd like to do at this time is to, in a concept level, go ahead and have fellow board members ask specific questions of you, landscape architect as well. And if we can try to partition out questions from comment in the concept review level, we don't really have, as you say, full staff reports. It's a time to weigh in, to give thoughts, reflections. So thoughts and reflections, comments will come after questions. If we could go in that order, we'll have board member Sharon. Do you have questions of the applicant?
After all that, I feel like I should unmute myself before I start talking. That's our Zoom-based existence these days is always entertaining. Let's see. Just a question for Christine and Quadriga on the play area. The younger kid play area. I see fencing going around most of the sides, and there's an opening on the that would be the northeastern wedge side to the road. Am I saying that correctly? That there is an opening there? It's not just part of the rendering cutting off.
Yeah, there is an opening there, but it refers to a previous iteration where we had a crossing. So I doubt that we would have an opening there. I think it would feel unsafe.
Sorry, you cut off. I think a car went by.
We would not have an opening unless we had a crossing there. So I think likely we would close that.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that because it seemed kind of an interesting spot to open out onto the road.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. And for the architects, the colors that would be coming through into the shadow boxes, is it the same reddish orange? It's kind of the Golden Gate Bridge International orange that you have on the rear elevation there would be. So basically I know that color to be decided or it can be changed, but will it be the same throughout the site?
Actually, what we're doing is looking at varying the colors and then actually varying the stone on the base of the building too, to get some variety in the elevations. And there may be different shades of the exterior building, maybe a little bit more beige on some of the buildings and not so white, just to break up the buildings a little bit. And that we're working on those colors now. So that's kind of the idea. But the whole idea was not to make this, was to create a really elegant looking building and not something.
Of course, yeah.
It was all cut up and that's why we're treating the color really subtly on the building. And that's why we're using the stone on the building, because we think it's an appropriate site for that kind of base material. on the building because of its urban character of its setting.
And it's got a similar aesthetic to the West College buildings. And there for the horizontal kind of band structures that wrap around you, you went initially with the dark black, and then in the next iteration you came around to a lighter. It was I think a dark green. Was it?
Yeah, it was a dark green, and we added a lot more. Everybody was talking about making it look a little bit more farmhouse, so we went more with a contemporary farmhouse
Yeah.
theme because of the adjacent neighbors and their request for that.
Yep.
We felt that this particular site needed something a little bit more reflective of its kind of diverse surroundings.
Yeah, I was one of the members that enjoyed the modern look over at West College. But I was just curious, also with the color and the banding, those bands, and for lack of a better term, calling them that you went with the white this time. So thoughts to keep that white, or is that you're thinking about just varying the colors, might be beige, probably not the darker kind that you went with on West College?
Right. I wasn't trying to be really bold with color on this building, and I don't know. It just, to me, the area doesn't feel like it wants those kinds of darker colors. It feels like the lighter colors reduce the scale and the size of the building, which I think is appropriate for the area. And I really think the building looks like a condominium. It's got that real upscale look to it. And I think that this area could enjoy that kind of upscale look.
Sure. Now, another question about traffic and circulation. You said that you've talked with fire and you've had plenty of discussions with them.
Yes.
And one thing you mentioned, so I have a specific question about the ingress egress on Petaluma Hill Road. And did you mention something about how it'll be right turn only, or did I mishear that?
No, I don't think traffic has really addressed the issue of whether we're going to be, I know it's going to be right in, right out. I don't know if we're going to be able to go off of Petaluma Hill. It's going to be right in, right out.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to let us go across the median, and I don't think that's really been resolved yet through engineering. I think right in, right out of Colgan, I think would not be an issue because the traffic is not as great on that street.
Definitely, yeah. I was wondering if I just didn't quite hear it correctly. I thought that fire had weighed in on that as well, but no. So that at least right in, because that was a question I had about any left turn along that. In the alignment across with Santa Ana across the way.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. No. Thank you. And that'll do it for my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Sharon. Let's move on to Drew, to Board Member Wiegel, and hear your comment, your questions.
So I actually have a question for Chris today that she can be working on in the background. But I was looking for the zoning on this particular parcel and the building height in the zoning code. I was trying to dig around, I couldn't find it. If you could find the maximum building height for me.
Can I respond to that?
Sure. Yeah, if you have it.
Yeah. So the zone is R330, so we're allowed 30 units per acre, which we meet.
No.
The height is 45.
Okay, perfect. 45.
And so we Kirk, tell me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe our buildings are 35 feet, not including those architectural projections that add, I think, at the top point, 3 feet. Kirk, am I right about that?
Yeah, it's something about, I think we've got the dimension of 34. Let me go to my CAD file right now.
It looked like it was a 37, 8.5. That's why I was asking.
Okay.
Because I know that the 35 is like the magic number for a lot of different things. So that's why I was asking.
Okay.
That's all. Cool. And then so I guess
your daughter, by the way.
Yeah, you're probably hearing my kids being.
we like to hear her point of view, actually.
Yeah. So I think they're outside now. So
that's okay. I want them involved.
So parking. So the parking reduction request, and But I mean, obviously, there's a reason for that because of the limitations of the site and the amount of units that you want to put down. Is there any other overriding factor beyond that that we should be aware of as a board for a parking reduction?
Is that for applicant or staff?
That would absolutely be for the applicant.
Okay, so yes, there are some site constraints to get the density we need and the units we need, and also accommodate that amount of parking. We also understand that as a general policy matter, and I don't want to speak for staff, but reductions up to 25% are generally looked upon favorably. The idea being that particularly in transit oriented environments like this is that you don't necessarily need all of this quote standard parking. Another thing I would point out is that we are very heavy on 1-bedroom units. So we think that is what the market wants in this area. And so we have 83 1-bedroom units and 64 2-bedroom units. So we think the parking is appropriate at the levels we're proposing.
Sure, that's fine. Yeah, I just thought there might be another reason that you guys were requesting that, but I think that adequately answers my question. And then my last question would be, and I think you probably keyed off onto it, kind of like my head scratching. Hey, this looks a lot like another project we looked at back in November. I think they're on separate sides of town, so they're not like right next to each other. But I guess I'm just curious why from a massing standpoint, the buildings are pretty much identical with a variance in materiality. And I guess I was curious as to the thought process for that.
I think that's Kirk, your question.
Generally speaking, to get to this density of a project, you have to do large buildings. Because if you do a bunch of smaller buildings, you're going to have more separation between buildings, and it's a less efficient way to get the density. So we were kind of committed to going to a larger building to get the density up. And the fact that we liked the building that we had for West College the last time, and I do agree that it was probably inappropriate for that setting based on community input as well as the design review board. And we felt that this one could settle here, this building could settle here, but it really needed to settle in here with kind of a little bit different material selections. And we have changed some of the massing subtly on it. But we just felt that this was an appropriate location. The building seemed to be suited for this site. And so we decided that it was the best approach to meet the goals of the criteria to achieve the density. And it's an elegant building. And I think it'll lift the whole area in terms of architecture.
Cool, thanks. Those are my questions, Vice Chair Hedgepeth.
Thank you, Board Member Weigel. Let's move on to Henry Wicks and share your questions.
Good evening. Could we get up to the site plan that Adobe did at the very beginning? Most of my questions for the applicant surround that site plan. Probably page 1.
The other way.
Actually, that second one, yeah. So I counted 50 2-bedroom units and 97 1-bedroom units. Adding up those calculations, there's 12 Plan 4s, 12 Plan 5s, and 26 5Xs, which totals 50.
Yeah. Unfortunately, James, are you on right now?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, let's see. I think there are a group of units that are 1 bedroom, 1.5 baths. I'm wondering if you're counting those as different. Because I'm looking at let's see.
No, I believe there's 50 2-bedrooms, aren't there?
No, I think what happened, James, is I think your notations on the civil sheet are incorrect, and we need to change those, because I believe what happened is the 1.5s got converted to 2s. I don't believe, Kirk, we have any 1.5s anymore. Is that right?
No, we do have 1.5s.
On Petaluma Hill Road?
Yes. It's a 1-bedroom den.
Does it have 1.5 baths?
And it has 1.5 baths, yes.
Okay.
That's the plan 4. I mean, the plan 3. Plan 3 and the plan 4 are opposite ends of the building. One's a 1-bedroom, 1.5, 1-bedroom den.
Hey, Henry.
Yeah.
I think I have the solution here. So from I think staff can maybe clarify this. When you have a 1-bedroom that has a den, if the den has certain features, like it's got a closet and a door, it's technically not a den in the eyes of the code. It's actually a bedroom. And so that may be where they're getting the 84 and the 60. And staff can maybe correct me on that if I'm wrong. I know I've gone through that process with the county as an example.
So the plan, thanks, Drew. Do the plan 3s have with a closet in the den?
No, they do not.
Do they have a door on it?
I believe I have the door off.
Okay.
Kirk, I'm looking at your plans, and they do not have any 1.5s.
I can't get to mine because I'm going to...
I thought there was a disconnect between yours and James on this one. So by the way, you might be conflating this with West College. So I'm showing 26, 12, and 26 2-bedroom, 2 baths.
I wonder if they... I can't get to my drawings because we're in Zoom.
Okay, I don't want to get too hung up on this because I'm going to suggest if my other board members follow my lead on it a little bit, but I'm going to suggest a further parking reduction. I just kind of wanted to get some accurate numbers on that, but we can just do it conceptually, and when you come back for preliminary.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but I do believe there's a disconnect between those two, and I think the architectural plans are correct. I think we did away with the 1.5s. And made those 2s, but we'll verify that for sure.
Okay.
So back to that site plan on the southeast side of building A or block A. There's looks like it's either a turnaround for fire access or it's a loading zone. Can you clarify what that space is for? It doesn't have parking line designations in it, but
that little the 16-foot wide spot there behind the building.
No, that's emergency access. I got that. To the left of that, there is a indentation that looks like parking to me, but I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah, right next to the 26-foot dimension.
Yeah, between that and the 16-foot, there's a recessed, widened area of paving.
That's
looks
supposed
like
to be parking spaces.
They're what?
That's supposed to be parking spaces. I'm not sure why those lines are off. I see something similar just above building G. We have a strip of parking. The stripes look like they're turned off for some reason.
Got it. So that same thing happens on the pool.
I see where you're talking. I see where you're talking. Yes, that is headed in parking in that location.
Yeah, this is where I really wish we were in the chamber so I could use my laser pointer and make it real easy on everybody.
Yeah, and I think that's true at the pool area too. Yeah.
Yeah, on the right there. Yeah.
Yeah, right at the entrance point.
So those parking lines are just layers off or something that didn't get it designated. Okay. For Mr. McKinley, your thought process on the location of the rec building. I'm wondering if it was an echo from the College Avenue project, but the pool to me, I'm wondering why it wasn't flipped so it gets the western sun and less shadow from the buildings, and made the pool a little more of an intimate space for the users from the apartment complex rather than it being exposed to Petaluma Hill Boulevard.
It's interesting that you should mention that because I flipped and flopped on this thing. I tried it both ways. And the only reason I stuck the rec building farther in was because you seem to want to have the actual building in there, but we can easily flip that whole thing. But I have mixed feelings about going one way or the other. So
yeah, my thought on that would be I like the centrality of the rec building because I think that's the more interactive space. So I like it being kind of in the middle in the wheel, so to speak. With the pool being maybe not as universally well used. I just like the visibility and accessibility of that rec building to all the residents. It just feels better to me. But
yeah, one of my thoughts was for doing it this way. If driving along Petaluma, it offered a little bit more relief to the building frontage on Petaluma, because all of a sudden you didn't have a building up against the street. It's a big open space. But I could be convinced to flip it, quite frankly. I wouldn't have a problem at all with that.
I think more people will use the rec building more of the time. And I do like that break in the action on Petaluma Hill Road as well.
I agree.
All right, I'll save my comments on it till later, but thank you.
It'll be back to you for final decision.
All right, and then I got another question for probably James on the civil side. Has fire department reviewed this parking layout and turn radiuses for fire trucks, etc.?
Yeah, we've gone through some extensive conversations with fire to make sure that we meet their needs, especially because we trigger the aerial access requirement. So we've met in person with Jeff over there in emergency services, and we've had phone calls. I'm feeling like that access perspective has been very well coordinated to this point.
Okay, I guess one of my not concerns, but I just wonder if it's been paid attention to at this level, which I understand it's early on, but in building E and C in particular, E's got an outside corner and it just looks tight going 26 to 26 there. I'm wondering if a fire truck can really make that corner. And the same at the south end of the C block, and I'm going to suggest getting rid of those 2 parking spaces anyway. But Jeff didn't give you any input on those, or they're okay with that? Have you put your template on to show that the fire truck radiuses are met?
Yeah, we looked at the turning simulations. The 90-degree turn in that southwest corner is fine. I'd have to look back in my notes, but I recall the conversation with fire was that they don't necessarily need to make that hairpin turn on C. They'll just swing around the whole site.
Got it. Yeah. All right. I'll be quiet for a while. That's all my questions. Thank you.
But I would say again that we've had really extensive discussions with fire on this. I mean, very, very detailed.
Awesome. Thank you.
Welcome.
Hey, Warren, I just wanted to tag on to Henry. I found that plan 3. It's on sheet A1 and A2 on the second floor and the third floor of the 20-plex. And it's in the upper left-hand corner of the second floor and the third floor. So there it is shown with that den. With no closet. So just wanted to point that out.
We'll get thank you. We'll get that all synced up. There was a little bit of confusion on that point.
All right, thank you. Yeah, just in wrapping up questions, I had a couple questions. This may actually, Christine in landscape may weigh into this. If you go back to let's go to the landscape plan. I mean, maybe the landscape plan's fine. So the overall, yeah, we can just look at the overall site plan there. One of the interesting things about drive lanes for fire trucks, and there's conversations now about trees. I know your trees aren't exactly identified, but when firefighters come into buildings over 30 feet, my understanding is that you can climb one side, get up on the roof, perhaps serve the other. And the question I have here is when we look at tree species, typically on the garage site where sans trees, there's a few areas where you do have trees. The center building, some of the buildings to the north there are tree pockets where you're feeding into entries. But my understanding is if fire is going to go ahead and serve lives and save lives on the site here, is it true that if you can access buildings like in the west there, where you don't have trees necessarily against the car park tuck under, is it true on the other side you could have taller trees like ginkgos or something where once you get up on the building, get up on that roof to fight the fire, is the fire department tolerant of tree species that do bump above, say, 15, 20, or 30 feet? And that's a question.
Yeah, this is Christine. So my understanding is they will want access on one side, like you indicated. So I think that we selectively find spaces where we can have larger, like that. What's the building? The building that's oriented north-south on the very west side of the site, in that little space. Like maybe that building, we could have larger trees because they have access up the back.
Right. That's my thinking.
But when I was talking about that with Kurt, because we were looking at ways to get rid of that weird little island in there on the site plan, and not only do they need the 26 feet, they need 15-foot offset from the building for their aerial access, which we don't have on the garage side. So I'm hoping at least on the corners we can get away with a larger tree, but the tree in the middle, like for instance, there's 3 trees on that that particular building. Maybe the ones on the ends we could have taller trees, but the one in the middle, I don't think they're going to let us get away with.
Yeah, right in the middle of all the Piccadilly Square tree sitting there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they want that 15-foot offset, and that's where we've had a lot of challenges with street trees lately, because it really limits. Other jurisdictions, they allow us to do trees. They just want access like at corners, or you need to have breaks. But here, they want all the trees within their aerial access to be under 15 feet.
Right. So we will have, if they can serve buildings, at least on one side, you're free to perhaps explore trees of more grand size on the opposite side without reprimand.
That's our approach. Yeah, totally.
Right. And I think the reason, continued questions or clarifications, I stay with the landscape plan. Henry, to your question about Petaluma Hill Road and those feeder areas, what we do see in the driveway approach, the main driveway that's not the EVA to the south by the pool there, typically you have a 15 to 20 foot standoff. When you build a road throat coming in, you can't park right next to the sidewalk. And Christine and that team, you've got trees noted there where even on the EVA side, I believe the kosher thing to do is to hold off at least 15 feet back of property where cars do start, so that there's a throat there, and that seems to be manifest in the landscape plan. This is an exploration question. Knowing that we certainly have sidewalks on Petaluma Hill Road, and I'm very pleased that the city didn't decide to have some giant purpose-built road blow through the whole project. That whole intersection there, it's going to be a permanent T, which is a nice thing. When the housing to the east pours out, they'll be able to see this building. And so I'm just happy that the traffic, we got plenty of roads here, and it plays into a site plan that's more benign. But speaking of benignness, one of the questions I had is that as it sounds like it's going to shake out to 64 two beds and 83 one beds, which is fine. The question about the asphalt and asphalt treatments and accommodations, cars moving about this, it's automatically presumed that people aren't going to roar through this. It's more of a muse with buildings, so no one's going to be powering through here. But the idea of possibly relieving the asphalt with some other hard surface, whether it's some other kind of pavement material here and there, where you particularly if you look at the building north of the pool that has the entrances and the trees, you have the mouth of the building entrance back of the garage side, those slots. I'm wondering if we could have relief or exploration consideration of a whole different texture material there. I'm not necessarily advocating the reduction of parking stalls, but various areas in the property. I know I've seen wonderful examples where you could turf block the entire thing. That's a dream, but having some potential areas, it may be a civil rebuff to me because of between impervious and all weather for the fire trucks and so forth. But at least instead of 100% pavement, was there any exploration about 15 or 20% of the impermeable surfaces being something visually cued to 5-year-olds and 10-year-olds to get across that isn't just asphalt?
Well, this is Tim McGowan. Let me answer that question. We could look at that. It's always a benefit versus cost issue for a developer. This is a relatively expensive building to build. Choose to do that because we think it's going to be extraordinary and we think it'll be successful. So it's just how far can you push the cost to have the project make sense. So we can look at certain areas that maybe we could enhance something, but as a developer, you always have to be cost conscious, and that's an extraordinary cost, as you know.
Yeah, Tim, and I agree that I'm not pressing it as a question. When I think what's fun is that your colors, your cues to get into the buildings proper from the backside, they're elegant buildings. And point taken, it's certainly a visionary stretch and an excitement to have this quality of building in the area. The buildings speak for themselves. The colors, the landscaping is not minimum. And I think my point in general is because it isn't a gridded thoroughfare type project. You're going to proceed into the buildings, into the whole site with caution. That between the trees and the building, it would serve most people with good manners to be slow about their driving, and pedestrians are generally in a good place. So, yeah.
We can explore that. Let us explore that a little bit. I appreciate the input. And listen, we like to do everything we can, but we have constraints.
Yeah, you do. And one of the interesting things about this could tie still back with questions, but when you look at 147 units and you look at where the handicap do go and how you can queue, sometimes you can pair up handicap and have the loading area between be a queue zone. The question here is to disperse those stalls so that they are democratically salted about the site, so that you meet your ADA. It may be that not grouping those, but having them be democratically located so that they serve where needed. And specifically, what's obvious is the ground floor units where you can park right next to them. Your central western building and the north building up there where you can come in and park right in front of the units proper for guests is one thing, but the whole ADA situation offering covered is, are you looking at actually ingesting or swallowing ADA into the covering of your tuck under, or are you going to daylight your ADA out to the sun?
Kirk, that's a question for you.
The ADA is, we're going to require, there's going to be a percentage of the garages that have to be ADA accessible.
Yes.
And that's going to be based on 10% of the ground floor units have to be full. All of them have to be accessible, but only 10% of them actually have to be built out. The other ones have to be adaptable.
Right.
But we also have to have garages that are accessible, and so we're going to be locating those. I believe we have 2 of those on West College, and then we're probably going to end up with probably 3. And what we do is we take the garages at the ends of the buildings and we broaden them 4 feet. Where,
Yes.
Setback allows. And it's kind of a pop out on the first floor. And then we provide access directly into the unit through the garage or through a man door around to the front door, because that's allowed by code.
Yeah, excellent.
So we're going to have 3 of those, but they're going to have direct access from their garage or from a man door out of their garage into their unit.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
I believe those are my questions, and we can collect back now. This is, as mentioned, concept review. We have reflections, suggestions that will be, they'll be a matter of record, but they are by nature comment toned. So with that, we're going to go back, and Adam, can you share those
Board
thoughts?
member, excuse me, Vice Chair Hedgepeth, if I could interrupt briefly, we may still have someone wanting to do a public comment.
Yeah, yes.
I was going to remind about poor Mary. So.
Yes, I was. Thank you for that catch. I was wondering if we all had looped it in the front. And my apologies, Mary. There was no intention there. Are you still on deck?
Mary, if you are online, if you can please raise your hand if you're on the call, *9. Thank you.
I just hit *9. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, my question is, I'm really concerned about all the traffic on that corner, on this corner of Santa Ana Drive, Colgan, the traffic coming in and out of Lola's. There's another apartment complex across the way from where you guys are at. I'm really concerned with the traffic situation. because right now it is virtually impossible to make a left-hand turn onto Santa Ana Drive, and I'm having to a lot of times go around the back and go down to Blease to make my left-hand turn to go down south onto Petaluma Hill Road, because the traffic is just, we cannot get out. And a lot of problems we're having. Santa Ana Drive, there's always tons of cars on both sides of that road. We have, with Lola's there, we have delivery trucks that are trying to come in and out into Lola's. They're choosing to come in, go down Santa Ana Drive, and make that turn. And there's sometimes I look at it and I'm going, how are these trucks making those turns? You know, we really got to look at the traffic situation, fix the roads, widen the roads, whatever has to be done. You know, I like the idea of having sidewalk on that corner, but we really, really need to look at the traffic there, because it is horrendous, especially during commute time. It's like it can back up tremendously in this area. And I have another, I'm a board member over here across the street, and the townhouse is over here. And I've been here 20 years, and I don't plan, this is my home for when I retire, and I really don't want to see us having to deal with traffic, you know, on these roads when we can't even get around. You know, we've got people that are speeding down the street. You know, the other day, a couple days ago, we had people just spinning their tires down the road and then coming back down. You know, more people we have like that, the more we're going to have. That is my main concern, is this traffic. What are you doing to look at the traffic for this? That's a lot of cars. We're putting in, how many more cars, say, if each person in that complex has one car or even two cars? What's that going to do for us? Can we answer my question now? Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for coming on and being so patient through all the proceedings. Staff, maybe Bill and others, would you, Christine, would you like to comment in general about how traffic is addressed in these proceedings?
Thank you, Vice Chair Hedgebeth. Sorry, go ahead. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, Vice Chair Hedgebeth. This is Christine,
yes.
Planning. So at this point, the project is preliminary. A formal application has not been submitted yet. So if the applicant decides to move forward and submit a formal application, the traffic caused by the project would be evaluated with either a traffic memo or a traffic study that would be reviewed by city traffic, the city traffic department, and they would determine what, if any, traffic mitigations required to minimize any traffic issues caused by this project. And they may have some traffic calming measures or various solutions. It's hard to say what would be required until that study is done.
Thank you. Yes, that's my understanding as well. There's, I've heard two things with Mary. One is the behavior of drivers being discourteous, and the other is the question of things on site and tying in with fewer cars as we look more and more to projects where we're looking at parking reductions. That potentially means fewer cars. Noting that we're next to services and food and things, there's a lot of things that weigh into this, but as we look at the application collectively together and go through the traffic analysis, it will come back to us, and all parties, Mary, you'll be able to see those reports along with any other parties to see what unfolds.
Also, if I just might add that once this application does move forward and is formally submitted, staff will send out a notice of application to all the neighbors within 600 feet, letting them know that, hey, we received an official submittal for the project, inviting them to review the plans. And once this item is ready for hearing, the public will receive another notice. So there are multiple points at which the public can participate and comment on the project down the road.
Thank you, Christine. Will you probably be the staff planner on this? Is that what you're anticipating? Or that's not been determined?
Usually that is the case. Usually the planner that has had the most experience with the project is usually assigned to the project.
Thank you. So we can look to you then for that as it goes through its next steps. Are there any other members? Yes.
Vice Chair Hedgepeth, this is Bill Rose.
Yes.
You know, as the board knows, it's common to have a back and forth dialogue with the applicant for concept review. And so I believe the applicant has raised his hand and may have some additional comments, and they may also tie into some of the comments we just heard from the member of the public, and also some of the comments that you all have given. So if the Vice Chair pleases may wish to call on the applicant.
We'd be happy to have Jeff and Tim and others share with us at this time. Yes.
Yeah, so this is James Jensen with Adobe Associates. I believe that Jeff had already mentioned it when he was giving his spiel on the project, but circulation and traffic is definitely on the development team's radar. We do understand that the project is consistent with the general plan from a global traffic perspective, but from a closer circulation perspective of the development in particular, we have engaged with city transportation staff and with W-Trans, and we are looking closely at how this interacts with the ins and outs of Petaluma Hill Road and Colgan. So that's something that we are gyrating on now, and we do expect to kind of block and tackle through that as we move forward.
Thank you for that, James. Are there comments from Jeff or Tim on any other fronts with what's been said so far?
Vice Chair Hedgepeth, your sound is muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. I just asked, is there any other questions from that want to be addressed through Jeff, Tim, or other members of the team besides Adobe regarding the project?
This time.
Yeah, sorry about that, Warren. I just heard from Jeff that it sounds like they're having some audio difficulties again, but Jeff did want to mention that we are scheduled for a neighborhood meeting on August 5th.
Yes.
So that's going to be another opportunity for folks to see what's cooking.
Can I jump in and ask James another question?
Yes.
Related to the traffic discussion, the closest bus stop is on the north southeast corner of Colgan and Petaluma Hill Boulevard. And it looks like from my map, there's another one just to the north of Lola Market on the other side of the street. Is that true, James, or?
Yeah, I believe, there's a bus stop, but it doesn't have a turnout in the southbound direction on the northwest corner of Colgan and Petaluma Hill Road.
Okay.
And then south of Lola's in the northbound direction, there is an existing bus stop that I believe does have a turnout.
So there is public transit almost directly adjacent to this project. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Henry. So with that, it looks like we've had questions commented on by the applicant. And Bill and Christine, with that, I don't know if anyone else has come on for a public comment. Are all your lines clear? Is there anything at this point where we can't proceed with comments from the board for said concept review?
I don't believe so.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Patty.
Sorry about that. Yeah, we don't see any more raised hands. I think we're good.
All right. Well, with that, we can go ahead then and hear from board member Sharon, and we'll proceed then to Drew and Henry after that.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for answering those questions also, and good to hear that you're thinking about the circulation and the traffic. It was some of my concerns, or just coming into the project, and definitely could see that the public also had those concerns as well. Thank you, Mary, for your comments on that. And glad to hear also that there's an upcoming neighborhood meeting where people can ping you with questions and you can respond as well and allay some fears. And also educate on the process of how this will move forward, that nothing is a done deal at this point, that there is going to be more weigh-in by the city and by traffic as well. That being said, thanks for a needed project and a good concept coming in right out of the gate. I can tell that a good amount of thought has been put into this. I do like the aesthetic that you're bringing and the massing. As I mentioned before, I liked what you brought on West College, and was interested also to see very similar design and massing in this project. I did look through your website and portfolio a bit to see if this was a standard aesthetic for you guys, and I was glad to see that it's not. I do think that we had, so it was brought up before, and I'm sure we brought up again, that there good design, interesting that pretty similar designs twice in one city. I think that if it's brought a third time or a fourth time with very similar aesthetic, there will be more questions about that. But I do appreciate that you're also thinking about it and wanting to tweak as well. I do like the addition of the color with the shadow boxes and with I believe it's the stairwells, and bringing those around all around the building. I think that you could. I appreciate what you're doing is trying to keep them as surprises on the front and the sides, to see them at that oblique angle. But I think that somehow to figure out how to bring more of the relief from just the swaths of white or cream could be useful to have, and give it a little bit more pizzazz, and lighten the large bands that you've got going around as well. Because that's one of the things that I like about the design is those bands really anchor what you've got. But I do think that you have to be careful with how much you're anchoring and how much you're creating lightness. The color can be used for that. I also like to hear that you're thinking and kicking around different materials, stone, and in the future, it would be nice to see, at this point, even to see some options that we can comment upon and choose and kick around a little bit. It's always nice to have more things to push off of to give us some purchase. And so, but I think that it would be very interesting to see how the project evolves. I think bringing in some of the lightness of materials and color to the staid facets of the building will be useful. As far as the going to the site, yeah, the interestingly shaped site with all of the angles and juts with the surrounding properties. You've done a good job with trying to shoehorn the buildings into here. As far as the rec building and the pool, I could see both ways with the flip-flopping, and I'm not surprised that you have flip-flopped both ways and that you could be convinced either way. I do like the idea of the pool being as a central courtyard and that recreation area being a courtyard. And so flipping it with the building. But I can also see that coming along that corner, coming down Petaluma Hill Road from the north and then coming up from the south, that having, what you're pointed at to be a hub of activity, outdoor activity rather than another building could be very useful. It's that balance between the public face and the private face of the project, of how much you want to do. So again, I could be convinced either way. When this would come back, I'd like to hear your design thinking and be convinced. I appreciate all of the effort being put into providing the tree relief to the large areas of asphalt that are here. Great job with bringing that in to soften what you have, and I think that you're well on your way. And I think that it's going to be very interesting to see what you come up with the constraints of what you've talked about with fire, and also thinking about the opportunities along the western edge and with the street trees of how you're going to bring in that visual interest while also maximizing the safety of what you got. That island in the middle is problematic. So yeah, good luck with that. I have a question, or not a question, a comment about the child play area. I did have the question about the fencing and the placement. I recognize that it's sort of one of the only somewhat centrally located spots where you can invite play into this area, into the whole site. And but it is, I do have concerns just safety wise with it being in the midst of all of the parking and right alongside of the driving zone, with that one of the main access roads coming in the driveways. And I'm not certain how you can solve that, because I say you've maximized a lot of the space with what you have here. So I think that some of the things that you're talking about, Christine, that you answered with the fencing along the side there, you mentioned plantings and some of the structures. You've got the pebble seating, as you're calling it, the natural stone boulders. I think figuring out ways to really create that as a safe, protected zone, while also keeping it light and airy and fun, is going to be a challenge. And wondering if there's any more space that can be added to that somehow. Yeah, that's going to take some thought. As usual, you guys are doing a great job with the circulation and adding in the pedestrian access to the site and the sidewalks. I think it's very necessary along that corridor, both on the Colgan Avenue side, which is pretty rough, and the Petaluma Hill side, which is pretty busy. So I think those are great opportunities, and that's can get more, can be an asset for getting the community on the side, that public and private face of really seeing how you can add into to the neighborhood that you're doing. You're joining. And that should do it for my comments. I'm really interested to see where you guys take it, and I think that this is a really great start. And thank you for adding, wanting to add in another housing development to the city. Thank you.
Vice Chair Hedgepeth, this is Bill Rose. It appears we do have one more caller in the queue with hand raised. So if the Vice Chair pleases, we could take comments at this time.
Hi, my name is Linda, and I live directly across the street on the corner of Colgan and Petaluma Hill Road, or not Colgan, of Santa Ana Drive and Petaluma. I live in the townhouses, the same complex that Mary lives in. And my concerns are similar to Mary's. I appreciate the fact that you're trying to do a more one color toned building. I think it maybe looks a little bit too much like an office building or hospital building, but I like it much better than I went to the local paint store and they had all of these cans on sale because they were the last can of each color. I don't like that look at all, so I appreciate the one color building much more. I do think parking is a big issue because the complex we live in, we have 2 fewer parking spaces than we have number of units, and each unit has at least a 1-car, if not 2-car garage, and we still have people parking on the street on Santa Ana Drive. So parking is a real issue in this area. I also don't know how many of you are aware that Petaluma Hill Road is used much like 101 and Santa Rosa Avenue at certain times of the day, particularly during commute hours. So traffic is a real issue on Petaluma Hill Road. I appreciate the fact that you're putting in sidewalks. I think that's a big asset for the community area, particularly for the Colgan Street side, because I see people walking in the street there all the time. I'm retired now, but when I used to commute and drive down Colgan to get to the freeway, there were always people more or less in the street. So I appreciate the sidewalks there. I am concerned about the egress, but hearing that the egress on Petaluma Hill Road will be a right turn only in and out of the complex, that makes it a little bit easier, but I know that traffic is an issue there. There have been multiple accidents at the corner of Colgan and Petaluma Hill Road before that traffic light went in, and there are still some there. There have been multiple accidents down at the corner of Breeze and Petaluma Hill Road where there is not a traffic light. There's a flashing light for pedestrians, but there have been multiple accidents there. So traffic is definitely an issue on Petaluma Hill Road.
Just
so
so you know, you have about
those are
28
two of
seconds.
my biggest concerns are parking and the traffic. I would prefer 2-story buildings. I think 3-story is doesn't fit in with the adjacent neighborhood. If you go down the street a few blocks to Kiwanis and Petaluma Hill Road, there are some new 3-story units going in there. And if you go down to Yolanda, there is a new complex going in there, which I don't know how high that is, but given that it's a 250 plus unit complex, I would assume it's probably also 3-story.
All right. So thank you, Linda, for those comments. We appreciate them. And with that, we'll resume back. I believe that, Adam, you had completed your comments on the project. But before we do that, are there any other raised hands from the public? Patty, Bill, Christina, is there anything else coming up over the hill with public comments?
Not seeing any more raised hands at this time.
All right. Well, with that, we're going to continue. And Board Member Weigel, would you share with us your comments?
Yeah. So I don't have very many comments. but I would encourage that you pursue a variance of the design, so you don't have what feels to me like a identical cookie cutter project to the West College project. To me, only varying the colors and the wall finishes doesn't like do that. Plus, I think there's a certain character to this area of Santa Rosa, and what you propose might match it. I would encourage you to maybe go take another peek in that area. So I would challenge the applicant to go back to the drawing board on the facades. Don't like worry about redoing footprints or anything, but maybe take another look at those facades. All that being said, if you were to come back with this exact project for preliminary review, I'm generally in favor of it. So it's not like I don't like what you put in front. I just would challenge you to mix it up a little bit, I guess is what I would say. I know that there's covered tuck under parking, but I know for a lot of clients that we have, we've pursued solar shading, or what am I? Sorry, solar panel parking canopies. Oh, that's a mouthful. Sorry. So I would just encourage the applicant to maybe take a look at that. There's some advantages to working with companies that help provide that. There's some tax credits and some other stuff that may be advantageous for you. And it'll help break up the large expanses of asphalt that the project has in the parking areas. And then also, I think Warren alluded to this a little bit earlier, but I would encourage you to take a look at, Adobe and also Quadriga to take a look at, since we have all that asphalt, maybe we can do some permeable paving that does some biofiltration or something, or just because there is a lot of parking and streets and whatnot to do all these buildings on this size of the site. There's certainly a lot of hardscape, so to speak. So I would just encourage you guys to take a peek at that. When we see this again, I'd like to see the recreation building a little bit more developed. There wasn't any color or kind of real articulation or a 3D shot, and I think that's going to sell the recreation area and the pool. And if you do some sun studies, that might help as well. And I think in terms of the speaking of sun studies, just because of the adjacency of this project to kind of some of the other residential areas, a sun study might be in order, just to kind of show what the 3-story building might do in terms of casting shadows across Petaluma Hill to some of the stuff on that side of the road, south to the west, etc. That might help the public understand that 3 stories isn't necessarily a scary thing, and that 3 stories is a good thing because it develops more density for areas, adds X number of units for this particular project, right? And then the last thing that I would say is that since you are pursuing a parking reduction, I would encourage the applicant to go after some affordable housing. I know that's a different ball of wax for you guys, and if you're a market rate developer, that may not be your bailiwick, but I would encourage it. I think I was just reading an article about how 95% of workers that work jobs in the at minimum wage can't afford their housing, and we certainly have those sorts of folks here in our county, in our town, much like other places. So, and they need a place to live just like anybody else. So I would encourage affordable housing. And hey, if you do the affordable housing piece, you might get streamlined. I think there's an option for streamlining through the city. So I would encourage that as well. Other than that, good project, good thought process. Site plan looks great overall. And thank you very much for spending time with us today.
Thank you, Drew. Henry.
Yeah, when I first saw the project, I had to think about where I'd seen this before. And while the massing is almost identical to college, to me, the project has a little bit different feel because the frontages of the majority of the buildings front Petaluma, where the college project, there was just a quick glimpse of the project. It fronted on the project fronted more on a side street. So I'm kind of glad and excited to see the architecture that you developed for college being somewhat repeated here. But I also hear Board Member Weigel's comment loud and clear that if there's a stretch and you can do something a little bit different on this project to make it just a tad bit more distinctive to this location, I think that's a valid challenge, and you guys are probably up to that. I like the overall site planning of this. I a little bit to Vice Chairman Hedgepeth's comments about and Weigel also having some changes in the paving. Obviously the preferred would be permeable paving, but I think when you bring it back to us, just seeing some connectivity in the parking lot to me would help things a lot. Stretch for the ultimate of having some permeable, but at least some connectivity in the aisles of the parking to connect one building complex to another building complex. And there's a long stretch along the west side that I'd like to see probably some not speed bumps necessarily, but maybe some speed tables to break up the tendency for some of the tenants to maybe speed through there being late for work or whatever. And then I guess that applies to just the major circulation aisles. I think to the public's comment about the traffic and impacts of this project on Petaluma Hill Road, I think one of the solutions I believe in is if you have less cars, then there's less traffic. And I mean that in less parked cars on this project would have less impact on the traffic. And I know W-Trans, when they do their study, they're going to base it on the number of cars that are parked in the parking lot. It's those cars and the trips that they generate. So I would encourage, and hopefully I'm not out of line here, but I would encourage I actually have two alternate looks at the parking. Alternate one would be 1.5 spaces per unit. And there would be a 17.5 parking space reduction with my first alternate. And with that, if I could I get the Adobe plan back up again? I want to speak to that plan a little bit because I would want to see some of this parking reduction to specific areas. The biggest one I'd like to see that parking reduction of those 17 spaces is down in the 9 spaces that are behind building F or to the west of building F. Those, I'd love to see what landscaping and maybe some sort of outdoor amenity could be developed there, garden, I'm sure our landscape architects on the board could come up with some good uses for that space. And you could actually pick up 2 or maybe 3 spaces where the 26-foot dimension is. So it's really kind of a net loss of 6 parking spaces in that location. The other location I'd like to see a reduction in parking are the 3 spaces at the building E end. And again, increase that with landscaping and a softer turn there, larger radius from the 26 to 26-foot wide driveways. And then the same, losing the 2 spaces at the south end of building C. I think it always bothers me when a parking space intersects a curb, and if you got rid of the one, then there's one of the two spaces, then you'd only end up with 1 space left. So like to see those two go away. And that's only a reduction of, I believe, 12 spaces if you gain one back. So I'd like to see 5 others in my alternate one be reduced on the parking plan. My bigger alternate is going to 2 spaces for every 50 units, or excuse me, 2 spaces for the 2-bedroom units, which according, it's either 64 or 50, which I'll go on the 50 side of it, which would be 100 parking spaces, and 1 space for each of the 1-bedroom units, which would be 97, or a total parking of 197. That's probably a little too much because it gets us under the 25% I believe that we can make as a board. So my alternate 2A would be just a reduction to 25% of the required, or 203 parking spaces. And I strongly believe that this project is a good candidate for that parking reduction, regardless of if it's affordable or not. I mean, it's a matter of providing much needed residential units and having a grocery store right across the street, a major shopping complex within walking distance, where there's I won't name names, but we all are familiar with the shopping center on Santa Rosa Avenue, and a bus stop almost across the street from this project. I think it's a prime candidate to have a large parking reduction. So I'd like to see that worked out with staff and come back and show us a larger parking reduction. That'll put less cars out onto Petaluma Hill Road and be good for the neighborhood, and be good for the environment, having less cars. I listened to what you said about my suggestion of flipping the pool with the rec building. Again, I think I'd like you to convince us one way or another. I appreciate the 6-foot stucco wall being on Petaluma Hill Road, but I just wonder about the noise and how much that pool would get used, especially in the afternoon or later afternoon with the rec building casting a shadow on it. So again, I'd love to see some shadow studies as well, mostly for public calming, but I'm kind of curious about the shadows around that pool area, and I'd like to have you give us a strong presentation on that location. But overall, great project. Thank you for bringing it to Santa Rosa's. That corner, I could see that project being very successful on that corner of our part of Santa Rosa. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. I appreciate all the comments to date. I wanted to mention, I think you can hear me. Can everyone hear me or not?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, now you have to unmute, Vice Chair.
So I wanted to compliment all fellow board members on your thoughts, reflections, being immersed in the project. I think this is an amazing upgrade of this whole area. The whole project in general is a quality project, significant quality for the area. I know the team's kind of in the San Diego, SoCal area, and Irving Gill is one of my favorites. I was born in San Diego, but the whole idea of these kind of off-white buildings with trees doing a lot of the work between the dappling of shadow and the change of seasons, that's really an effect here. And it's a modernized version. Many people said Irving Gill preceded Corbu and a lot of other architects in bringing us contemporary architecture. But one of the functional things that's remarkable about this project is when you involve families, kids, tight bikes, the reason we have these, I guess my interpretation is when you look at all the outside private areas, it's full plastered walls that are creating privacy. They're creating less eyesore, and they just kind of blend with the building. It's kind of a twofer. If you don't mind that kind of architecture, that it's strong, it creates a geometric sense of extraction. I think that I appreciated what was going on West College. I actually, just a compliment, I find this project to have a strength to it, a robustness to it, a simple robustness. Is that possible? But the idea that all these buildings, or maybe some of them are slightly more buff than off-white, but I'm particularly appreciative of this being in the area with those accent areas inside. I don't think it would be relentless. I think it's probably one of the more stable, robust types of look we could hope for. What I'm particularly feeling happy about is that this stone, I'm not sure if it's a stone veneer, but if it's some level of stonework that has a depth to it, maybe it's at least 2 inches thick applied. But we didn't see this on the other project in college. This is a further kind of a timeless statement of particularly feeding up that stone to the second level. So the durability 40 years from now of the project is it's going to have these colors to it. It's going to have a lot of landscaping, and I just appreciate that about it. I do certainly respect Drew and Henry's comments about, do you want to take another look at things? I just like the idea that it has a wholeness to it, a collectedness to it, particularly with the privacy that's wrought, that is very noble for this area. So I'm not saying go back and change West College. I'm just saying that I'm pleased with it, because in some ways it's less, maybe it's just more defined. The clarity, like a trumpet making a clear note. There's a clear note being expressed in the project that I appreciate. So with that, I want to comment on a couple other items. I know people have talked about landscaping and parking reductions, and there was a possibility, consideration with Board Member Wicks about a 12 count. Perhaps at least the 9 stalls that are next to building F to the west, if it was just that, it would open up a play area in that zone. It's interesting on the city records as far as managing projects that are rented and managing parking stalls and managing cars. It'd be interesting to see a correlation of how much management participates in people's appetites to buy more cars and the rents and the designated stalls. If indeed the 1s and the 2s had various designated stalls, it was tied to the rent, and you have the capacity to stay in the complex should you not whet your appetite to buy more cars. That's another further way of managing projects with this hunger for cars. The other thing about my vote on privacy, the pool, and the rec building is, I rather like the idea of this. There's stucco and there's stone. The stone you have in the building, if you could imagine walls that are, I don't know, maybe they're 5 feet high instead of 6, but they would have actually openings to them here and there. It'd be a scattering of voids of the masonry. So if you had a staggered masonry layout, maybe this is also something that's in the child play areas, but instead of just seeing car bumpers, you could look out the child play area, have half walls, 4, 5, 6 feet, but they would be the stone you'd use in the building, and they would have voids here and there, a playfulness. I'm kind of 50-50 on the rec building. It's only a 1-story building, and it's a question of how well that rec building is used. I guess my particular vote is that the number of people going to the rec building probably exceeds the pool 5-1. That's just my speculation, my thought, and whether that's more local and that's a management issue. It's in the end of the day, I'm willing to go either way. So I think collectively here, the applicant has ahead of them various options and thoughts, and you'll come back to us. The understanding about parking reduction being an invitation, and where you take that invitation is in your hands. The idea of creating some levels of at least contrast, maybe it is speed tables. I know that impervious pavement is expensive, and you've got bioswale to the west performing heavily with that. But just the idea of contrast and some pedestrian, at least a relief from all black asphalt, was a thought. And with that, I believe we collectively can look at the future with an exciting project in an area that's hungry for heart. And this is a project, I think, that has a lot of heart. Thank you.
Vice Chair, this is Bill Rose. One suggestion would be maybe just one last check-in with the applicant, make sure they understand the comments and to see if they have any last questions.
Excellent. I was waiting for that. Thank you.
This is Kirk McKinley. I don't know if Jeff and Tim were able to make it back on or not, but I'm sure they probably heard a lot of this and will take it under advisement. And as always, your ideas are very welcome. I think they're very thoughtful. They make me think about other opportunities in the project. And a lot of what you've mentioned, I think we can integrate into the project. And I'm excited about, bending and working and seeing what we can do to make this project better.
Yeah, and this is James Jensen with Adobe. Jeff and Tim are having audio problems yet again, but they did want me to let you know that they appreciate the board's input. I do as well, and we're going to take it to heart, and we're going to incorporate what we can, and we're confident we're going to come back for prelim with a cool project.
Thank you very much, you guys.
Excellent. Thank you with that. So with those comments, notes, and records, we can then move on to the rest of our agenda items, which is board member reports. Are there any reports from any board members to share with us at this time? Hearing none, we'll move on to department reports. Anyone from the city wishing to provide a briefing on, I know that there are, I'll just say this much. In our emails, there's a flurry of things coming up between joint DRB and cultural heritage. We have our Thursday slots. It appears that between now and all of August, please be at your stations the first and third Thursdays if you can, because incoming will be projects, as I understand it, in the queue for your delight in August, first and third. And cultural heritage is still looking for a landing, as I understand it. Has the bird landed in some place yet, staff with Caritas?
I think so. I think the bird has landed. We and Vice Chair, thank you for mentioning that. This is really the one comment that I wanted to make. We do have a number of items coming up in the next, over the next month or so. And I would just encourage everyone to continue to monitor your emails. And Patty and I are actually going to go through and probably we'll circle back with everyone to get some quorum checks. There might be some outstanding meetings that we're still trying to track down, make sure we have a quorum. So I'd say just be on the lookout for that. And if Kristen A is still on, I want to say it's August 5th for Caritas, but I'm not certain of that, or Patty might be able to chime in.
Sorry, this is Kristen. It's August 6th. It's the Thursday.
The 6th, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we'll have that one. We have, like the vice chair said, we have a number of items coming up. So just please monitor the emails, and we will check in with you all to make sure we have quorum. So that's all I had, and thank you all for tonight.
Question for you, Bill.
Sure.
May I ask a question, Vice Chair?
Yes, you may.
Is there any discussion about us getting back into the chamber and doing our meetings in the city?
Not at this time that I'm aware of. Everything we're doing is pretty much following the health orders. And so the health orders we started to open up and we're going to pull them back a little bit. So we're following those. At this point, I don't have any new information about going into the chamber. Perhaps Patty or Mike may have some more information. So Patty or Mike, if you're still on, do you have any news on that?
At this time, there are no plans to return to council chambers.
Oh, to that point, though, Chair Kincaid and I have had a few messages back and forth, and we're going to continue to monitor ways to make these meetings a little bit easier, a little bit more meaningful, or I shouldn't say meaningful, but a little bit more efficient for everyone. I appreciate everyone making all the efforts. I know the challenges associated with this. So we're going to keep looking for ways to improve. That said, if you have any suggestions, please feel free to reach out to me directly and let me know, because these are somewhat dynamic. And if there's an idea that we think would work, we're very interested in hearing that and entertaining that. So that's all I had. Department reports.
Thank you, Bill and Patty. One thing I may comment, just a personal thing, possibly the day before, I see a lot of agendas popping up. There's city council, there's many different boards you have coming up. The hope is that take any first or third Thursday in particular, when the I legislate queue comes up, oftentimes we'll have the actual disclosure form, and the amount of time we have to look at the actual site plan work and the packet. I'm okay with 24 hours, 12 hours is too tight, but if we could at least on the Wednesday, maybe by 3:30 in the afternoon, have something to take home and go through, that's to me kind of the preferable thing. I get a little nervous when I see things come in much later than that.
Are you talking about the packet itself or just late information?
The pack. Well, there's the.
Yeah.
I think Patty knows what I'm talking about. You have the actual. Go ahead.
If I could interrupt very quickly, I normally publish everything the Friday before the meeting, and I did publish everything online, but I forgot to push it out to iLegislate. So Vice Chair Hedgepeth reminded me to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm probably a little lazy because I like seeing it on iLegislate, and I'm sorry. With that, thank you, everybody, and hopefully one day again we'll meet at the chambers, as Henry said. So with that, I'm pleased to see so much come our way, and such courtesy and public service with that. So those are my comments. Everyone have a safe time. Please wear a mask.
Thank you all.